October's here, and while most of you nerds are DIYing yourself the perfect Halloween costume, we cool kids at movie lists are making a last-minute run to Goodwill so we can study horror films instead. And this time, we've decided to pay attention to some of the archetypal trends that define the genre. These are our picks for the top 5 horror tropes of all time. We think the best definition for trope is a recurring cultural pattern in a creative work. Tropes are what we notice when we look back in review. They emerge over the course of a medium's development as a common vocabulary is built between artists and viewers. But they also emerge because deep down within us, we all share a few essential features of humanness. Idiosyncratic side effects of our common evolution that has us programmed to respond strongly to some things and not to others. After a while, these common patterns arrange themselves into groups, and these groups become partially self-contained, and we call them genres. And the genre made up of storytelling tropes that tend to make us feel all the different kinds of fear is called horror. And with horror, at first glance, there's a ton of organizing tropes centered around location. We can all relate to the experience of being in a place and feeling some kind of wrong, especially if that place is your childhood basement. In horror films, there's a tendency to tell stories in the creepy backwoods, the gothic suburbia, there's the isolated horror of either the cut off or imprisoned variety, and there's the always interesting space horror. However, for our favorite horror location trope, we think there's something especially interesting about the haunted house with a history.
I just wish that all those people hadn't died here. I mean, a guy kills his whole family. Doesn't that bother you?
Well, yeah, sure, but houses don't have memories.
Maybe the last family was murdered, or maybe they murdered each other, or it was built on an ancient burial ground, preferably Native American in origin. But whatever it is, something messed up happened there, and it's burned its evil into the walls. Cinema's Hall of Haunted House fame is composed of the decrepit likes of The Uninvited's Windward House, Amityville Horror's 112 Ocean Avenue, Legend of Hell House's Belasco House, and, in hotel form, The Shining's Overlook. The haunted house with a history trope finds characters encountering unexplainable paranormal phenomena, and then discovering that they correspond pretty damningly to a past trauma. And that's what the haunted house is really all about, isn't it? An exploration and exploitation of how trauma tends to linger where we leave it, of how memory can attach itself very viscerally to a place, and how sometimes the knowledge of a tragedy in a specific place can almost project itself onto our experience of it. If you think about it, almost all of the commonly encountered horror baddies exist within the boundaries of a few very specific categories that say something about what we're fundamentally afraid of. The vampire is part of a pattern of slightly sexual, bat-related night dwellers. Zombies are a monster trope that spread like an incurable disease, and demons are a brand of monster that can overwhelm us with evil from the inside. There's the unkillable terror, the demonic child, the vengeful spirit. However, there's something especially unnerving about finding out that man is the scariest monster of all.
You know, Burke, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage.
There's something extra terrifying about learning that the evil isn't some supernatural entity that goes away when the movie's over. It's a real human being. That evil, that's a part of your nature, somewhere deep down inside. And that gets us really deep in the scary place. Consider how it's used in The Night of the Living Dead, where surrounded by zombies, the protagonist is ultimately shot by an uncaring hunter. Or in 28 Days Later, where a safe haven of soldiers proves to be far worse than the zombie-infected alternative. Or especially 10 Cloverfield Lane, where the trope hangs over our heads the entire film like a question. Who should we really fear, monsters or men? As for the non-monster characters, there's the skeptic who gets his comeuppance, the survivalist who ironically doesn't, the hero who's actually related to the monster. There's the ever-moralizing sexual punishment trope that has the promiscuous die while the virginal live, and its racist cousin, the black guy, dies first. But we're eternally fascinated by the ubiquity of the final girl.
Okay, look, movies like this end when the final girl kills the main bad guy and the credits roll. This smoking hot girl called Paula, she arrives in the next reel. She's the final girl. Oh yeah. She is the only one in this movie who doesn't die. All we gotta do is stick with her, and we're gonna have the best seats in the house.
True to its name, the final girl is a trope usually found in slasher film that finds a group of characters whittled down to one, who almost always tends to be a girl. It's a fascinating trope that seems to have emerged organically in the slasher genre and has fallen under some very intense scrutiny, study, and debate. Why are they so often girls? Are we rooting for or against them? Is it a positive representation of women, a sign of strength, or an objectification? And if you you haven't been living in a digital dead zone for the past decade, you can probably guess that there are some strong opinions on both sides. We don't know whether final girls are good or bad, and we also don't think it matters. They're happening. Is it that we need them to be women because the horror audience wouldn't accept a male expressing the utter hysterical terror required in the climax? Maybe. Are they positive role models for girls? Ellen Ripley sure is. Are they a fascinating relic of our horror film culture in this modern era? Abso-freaking-lutely. The shape of stories also take on patterns themselves, which you can see in plot tropes. There's the creepy warning that the characters will certainly ignore, the crazy prophecy that inevitably comes true. There's the moment that the telephones are somehow disabled, the call for help that is disregarded, the splitting up that should literally never happen. And then there's the endings, twist endings, ambiguous endings, it was all in your head endings, feel bad bleak endings. But because we're still little kids at heart reminiscing about all our Goosebump books, we're giving this spot to the or is it ending.
Careful. This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Not in my movie.
Kind of like a twist ending, but at the very last possible second. The monsters were gone. We'd affirmed our own ultimate victory over evil. We can feel the credits coming, ready to tuck ourselves nicely into bed, knowing we're safe. When the rug is pulled out from under us, and it turns out our sense of security is a lie. There's nothing like the classic final scare of Friday the 13th to really turn everything on its head just in time to never sleep again. And that's what's so cool about this trope. It's like a last piece of story momentum that allows the emotions and terror to continue on in the film's stead. It sets a trajectory of fear with one final scare that has the movie and the terror hanging with you. Because, as it turns out, some of us still want to be scared. Finally, finishing off our tour, let's not forget what everyone's really here for, the scares. And most of the time, we're seeing a lot of the same sort. Mirror scares, they're right behind you scares, fakey cat scares, crescendo anticlimaxes, the unseen POV. However, for our number one pick, don't try to deny it. When it all comes down to it, most of us are just hoping for a really good jump scare.
We mustn't judge too harshly, Will. It was his first time. Have you never felt a sudden rush of panic?
Don't get us wrong, we love the slow, full-tension build-up that twists the screws for so long we just want to run out of the theater screaming because it seems like it will never end. But then, once it does, we're just like everybody else. We want to poop our pants. The Silent Phantom of the Opera was the first film to attempt this kind of scare, and then a few decades later, Cat People was the film to really refine the technique. Really took off in the 60s with Psycho, The Innocents, The Haunting, and Repulsion, and pretty much every horror film since then. There in the edit, in the flash of a cut, in the shot with the turn of a camera, in the set hiding right behind that thing right there. It has saturated horror cinema, exhausted some people, energized others. It's probably what people's minds go to when they first think of really being scared. Because it's so very primal at its root, an experience that goes back to the original evolutionary purpose of fear, to get our asses from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds flat, which is why it's our pick for one of the best horror tropes of all time. So, what do you think? Disagree with any of our picks? Do we leave out any of your favorite horror tropes? Let us know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe for more CineFix movie lists.